Hi there. Uh, I realised that my last video on the quipot might have raised a few eyebrows because I concluded that the quipot, the orders of demons, could be a way out of all this, out of here, and into transcendence and transformation. And the man on the Clapham omnibus will say, "Well, just a load of old demons." If you see them, run away, or break out the garlic, or the exorcism paraphernalia. But I think that, or you may say, well, we agree, but surely the Quipot are somewhat of a spectrum of items in the universe, or rather, they cover a spectrum of norms, values, and beliefs and behaviors, same as anybody else does in this universe. And that's very true. And that's one thing which I want to emphasize today in this presentation. Because, yes, indeed, there could be, or indeed are, types of quipper, which is the plural of the quipot, and various orders of groups of them and individual of the quipper. They do have all their individual characteristics and group characteristics, let us say. Um, and of course, the first thing to kind of get out of the way is, are they external or internal? In other words, are they just aspects of the self or the unconscious, or are they external entities? And of course, this is a very, very huge question. But for the purposes of this presentation, it really doesn't sort of matter whether we think of them as external agents of causality, existing independently of you, or whether they are in fact aspects of yourself. Either way, the same information works, as it were. But of course, I suppose that some people may say that if they're external to me, then it's a bit like, stepping on a banana skin which actually does exist, rather than a banana skin which only exists in your mind. But I would suggest that you're going to skid in either situation, because your mind tells you to skid because it's a banana skin that you see, in inverted commas, or it is in fact a real banana skin which makes you skid. So the effect of it's the same in either situation. But granted, it's a good meditation to consider the quipper as being aspects of the unconscious, aspects of the self, to put it in sort of quasi-Buddhist way, rather than external entities. Although, for the purposes of practical interaction with these, with the quipper, it might be sensible to consider them to be external entities pro tem, or as if they are, as it were, and take suitable precautions if you're going to be interacting with them in any intimate or meaningful way. But I think they do occupy a spectrum of behaviours. First of all, on the right here, we have extremely hostile. So basically, they don't like human beings, and as soon as they see that you're a human being of any description, that they want to tear your head off, sort of thing. They're very hostile, very defensive, very territorial. A bit like sort of lions and tigers and hippos, and they can be very dangerous creatures if provoked. And crocodiles and things like that. But there's a degree of, some people may say, and this is part of it, that they're right to hate human beings because human beings are probably the most evil creatures in the whole universe. And they have every right to be suspicious and fearful of human beings, and want to kill us on sight. But this contains within it, I think, the a sort of feeling of the false accuser of Satan, that accuses mankind of being awful and evil and irredeemable. And that's how he, in fact, has sway over the human race, by pointing out that our irredeemable sins, whereas in fact forgiveness and redemption should be part of the formula, which are not part of the formula of these hostile creatures. So in a way, you can sort of say it's no excuse for them to be so hostile against humanity. What do they mean by that? And is there a hidden agenda attached to this judgment of humanity on their part? So coming on to the next one, and this is a sort of backstabbing type of quipper. They pretend that they're your friend, and they stab you in the back as soon as you turn your back on them. But considering these are parts of yourself, you could ask yourself a question: are you in fact like that? Are you a backstabbing person? Even if it's unconsciously, even if it's kind of mildly. Do you dish the dirt on people? Do you have a negative opinion of people which you convey to others? Even in little ways, because these little things can actually mount up to a big thing in the end. And the question also you should ask yourself is, are you so judgmental on yourself as a human being that you hate yourself because you are human? I know a lot of people out there who do hate themselves because they're human. And some people I've met, some sort of vegetarians and animal rights people, have even said, we want the human race to be destroyed because it is so irredeemably evil and has done so many horrible things to animals and plants and the environment that we want the human race to come to an end. So you can ask yourself the question, are you one of those people? And so similarly, you can ask yourself the question, am I a backstabbing creature in this universe myself? So you see, you can turn these round and ask yourself questions as a result of thinking about these quipper and quippotic forces. Um, you can also ask some people, I've got here down manipulative by obligation. What I mean by this is that some demons will help you and say they will help you, but they won't tell you how much, in fact, their services are costing you. And we go into sort of, I suppose, we go into Faustian territory here that, you sell your soul for a packet of gold. And you have to ask yourself, am I the sort of person that likes to get people to in a position of obligation to me? And I go around helping people because I want power over people, or at least I want their undying gratitude to me. And it's all part of this sort of ego complex that I have and insecurity that I have, that I need to go and do good things to people and interfere with people's lives because I really, really want to feel good about myself. And I want to be validated by other people who are internally grateful to what I've been doing for them. So are you manipulating gratitude to your ends, or even to just bolster your ego, which is basically to cope with your own sense of insecurity and inadequacy? So that's another question you can ask yourself as well. Now there are other quipper that have this thing about rough, what I call tough love, and I have in mind here the sort of guru in Kill Bill, where the heroine goes to learn martial arts from this guru, from this master, and he is absolutely horrible to her. He abuses her. He's very critical of her. He he hates the fact that she's an American who's trying to speak Japanese. And he really makes her life absolute living hell. But she bears it with honor and dignity in order to learn the secrets of what he knows. But there's a slight hypocrisy attached to this character, I feel, because he is actually training people that will use the martial arts for criminal gain and for carrying out assassinations on behalf of paying customers. And so, therefore, he is teaching people who have no honor. They are mercenaries, and he's teaching them. So I fail to see how he can sit there and be so smug and talk about honor and righteousness when I don't think that his teaching of criminals has anything to do with honor or righteousness. I think he is an unrighteous person, a master with no honor, in fact. So So some of the demons are into sort of saying, I'll teach you, but I'll make it very harsh. I'll make the ordeals very harsh for you. And they believe in sort of in rough love and in harsh treatment of students. And apart from being hypocrites, well, I don't think it works on a lot of people. I don't think this tough love approach actually works at all on lots and lots of people. And in fact, it's useless and irrelevant behaviour. But you will come across a quipper who like to set themselves up as the dealers out of tough love, and they're sort of like the sergeant major. And again, it's all to do with their own ego, bolstering themselves up with their own ego by putting you down. They're making themselves seem greater. But you do have to look into who their students are. And if their students are in fact people that are dishonourable, then perhaps you shouldn't be part of that class at all. And similarly, you should ask yourself the question: am I one of these people who believes in tough love and dishing out the tough love to other people, and maybe keeping out of the way of tough love myself, and being a complete hypocrite about it? And also the fact you ask yourself: is this a good way to behave? Is it even efficient? Is it even a good way to teach people? I would dispute that. So there's another question for you to ask yourself. But finally, we do come to a type of quipper who do have something to teach and something to show, and they do have a hand to give you. But of course, I've got here, they're very weird and off-putting. Their appearance and their behaviours are quite mad and off-putting. And we think of Odin, for example, called the Mad One. And some of the shamans that you do meet on the astral, on the etheric, are very off-putting by by behaviours and by the way they act. But they do mean well. I mean, they really do mean well, and they really don't have an ego, and they don't have a hidden agenda. They really do want to show you something and avail you of certain pathways which could indeed lead to transcendence and transformation. So what I'm saying here is that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't just say, well, they're all evil. All the quipper are evil. I'm not going to have anything to do with any of them. I think that if you can be brave, courageous and free, you might find that they have teachings, or what the Buddha called dharma. They have dharmas to teach you. Even I suppose if they give you a bad time, you can still learn from the experience of being treated badly by certain of the quipper, which may be good for building your character. But on the other hand, I sort of have a suspicion that that's falling down back into sort of dualism again. And we are wanting to go beyond dualism to transcend duality itself. Yet I do believe that some of the quipper are perhaps are connected in some way, or even part of the transcendent, and that they are worth dealing with. But again, it's a spectrum. So where does one type of quipper end and another type begin? Because if it's a spectrum, you can't really sort of, by their fruits shall you know them, but you don't know them until that you've tasted of their fruits. And if their fruits are poisonous, well, you could be in a lot of trouble. And you really don't know who or what you're dealing with a quipper. Which is why traditionally in goetic magic and sorcery, a lot of effort went into finding out which demon or equipotic energy you were dealing with, and you put them through various tests to see if what their character actually was like, because you could be dealing with an imposter or somebody that's pretending to help you but actually hindering you. So I suppose really you've sort of got to know what you're doing, really, I suppose. Unless you want to live recklessly and want to give your email or phone number, to all and sundry, and just you don't mind the ride. You don't mind if people are trying to rip you off or scam you or stalk you or something, because you're quite prepared to have a stalker or a scammer You've taken off all your protection, internet protection, for example, and you don't mind who you deal with. Well, if that's your attitude, then by all means take off all your protections. But on the other hand, if you don't feel that you're strong enough to deal with the complexity of the quipper, then I suppose I have to admit that it might be a good idea to not have anything to do with the quipper, but instead concentrate on images that are peaceful ones and straightforward ones and angelic ones and positive ones, ones that will put you in a good frame of mind, rather than a sort of paranoid state of mind, because maybe nothing good comes from paranoia, and maybe you're not ready to go down the so-called left-hand path towards salvation. That you should stick with the right-hand path, because that fulfills more. That reflects more of your need, basically, for calmness and peacefulness. I always think it's very funny that they took the Book of Kings out of the Bible that they gave to the Goths and the Visigoths, because they reckoned that the Visigoths and Goths were too violent and warlike anyway, and if they read too much warlike stuff in the Bible, that would fuel the flames of their aggression. What you wanted to do was to calm the Goths and Visigoths down, and civilize them rather than make them more barbaric. At least that's the attitude of the people that gave them the translation of the Bible in their own language, in the Gothic language. Thought, from Rome, they just thought, oh, we better be careful what bits of the Bible we give them. Anyway, so perhaps you need to be careful what bits of esoteric and occult training you give yourself, and other people, because it may be that we need to be cautious on this matter, rather than reckless. On the other hand, nowadays, people have a propensity to be reckless, and I suppose they might say, well, I have a holy guardian angel to watch over me, so if I get into real trouble with the quipper, there's somebody to bail me out. I don't know. I just think, maybe that's possible. I think of people who fly through space. All they've got between them and certain death in open space is a single airlock. And if that airlock goes, you're in deep trouble. Is it wise to go out into space at all? Or is it, and if you are going out into space, is it not wise to take as many safety precautions as you possibly can, for fear of being sucked or blown out into space? So I hope that I've shown you that, this is a sort of matter for a lot of self-awareness. I think you need to be aware of your limitations and your character and your fears and ambitions and the things that you might be tempted with, before you begin any kind of mystical path or occult path. But of course, the trouble is that begs the question, doesn't it? I mean, if all of this is designed for you to know yourself, then how can you don't know yourself until you've been on the path, because that's the path to self-knowledge. So you really don't know if you are going to be in trouble along the path until you've actually been along it. I mean, if you could predict what was going to happen, you wouldn't walk the path at all, would you? So we find ourselves in a typical dilemma that's typical of the lower worlds. And perhaps, we should not walk along any path that we don't know about, and that we should only follow the path set out by avatars such as Jesus, or the Buddha, or Lao Tzu or Confucius. We should follow their path and their teachings rather than try to forge our own. But the choice is yours. It's up to you. And whatever you do decide, all I can do is wish you the best of luck, and good judgment follow you.